Hello, class. This is Dr. Benson. Uh, I'm here to give you, I'm going to do two things in this particular video. I'm going to review the instructional strategies that I just finished grading and then preview the assessment strategies activity that you have to do. So let's look at the instructional strategies first. I want to commend you all on the job well done in dealing with the bunk activities. I think you did a good job in presenting your 20 activities, and you also did a good job in interacting with your peers and the activities that they posted. My hope was that even though you looked at 20, you would sort of get a taste of all 100 of them. So even though you know more about your 20 than you know about the other 80. Hopefully, as you were going through and reviewing your peers' work, some of those piqued your interest and caused you to at least want to note them to go back and look for them later. I don't know if you'll look at them now, but you'll think about them, and maybe they can be in your toolkit of activities that you might use once you're back in your class. So I thought that discussion went very, very well. What you're going to see is that we're going to use these bunk activities over the next 3 or 4 weeks. Next week, you're going to add materials to the bunk activity. And then the following week, in assessment strategies, you're going to add an assessment strategy for those activities. The only comment that I would make is that some of you did not describe your activity very well, so it made it difficult for your peers to understand what the activity was. Now, I'm not expecting for you to write a page of stuff, but maybe a sentence or a couple of sentences just to help people understand what your activity is would be nice. Like next week, you're going to have to say, this week, what you're doing now is you're saying, these are the materials that I need in order to accomplish this activity. I think that's going to force you to think more about what that activity is, and you just want to make it clear. Right now, you're thinking about yourself, but more so you're thinking about your peers who are going to be looking at your work. So, like I said, we're going to be looking at these over the next few weeks. So you'll be able to see how you can make it clearer what you're actually doing. Some of them, and I noted this on some of your papers. Some of your activities were very, very generic, and for some of you, I think when you couldn't find an activity that directly matched your project, you sort of left that one blank. I don't want you to have any blanks as we move forward. I want you to come up with activities, and even if you can't use those with your project, those examples will be helpful to your peers in understanding what bunk was talking about. So that's what I ask you to do, not to give me any empty bunk activities. I also appreciated your discussion of Bloom and Gagne. Very, very interesting discussion. Some of you preferred Gagne, some of you preferred Bloom, some of you saw room for both of them. I think I'm in that camp that sees room for both of them. When I think about Bloom, in the most general sense, when I think Bloom, I think, okay, people need to do more than define the term. They need to be able to act in some way. That act could be in building something, designing something, or thinking differently about something. Now, that's not what Bloom's is, but that's what Bloom's triggers in my mind. That I need to move more from defining and describing to doing and applying and creating, judging, that kind of thing. That's what Bloom says to me. But the thing that we have to remember, and I think the thing that sometimes get lost, is that when you say you want to focus on higher level objectives or objectives at the higher levels of Bloom, I think we may be safer in saying that you want to build on the lower levels of Bloom. Because if you're teaching something that's at a higher level of Bloom, it's going to more than likely it's going to require some learning of some skills that are at the lower levels of Bloom. And so I think where we get into trouble sometimes is that we fail to understand that in order for a learner to achieve this higher level objective, they need to develop some lower level skills. So we work with the higher level objectives, and then our sub objectives or enabling objectives can be at lower levels because those are the skills that you need in order to develop that higher level objectives. And I think sometimes that get lost. Maybe it's just me and it doesn't get lost, but I just wanted to say that. We talked about Gagne, and there were some very interesting perspectives on that as well. No, Gagne is not the be all and end all of how you design a course, but the way we used to say it, and when I say we, I mean me and some of my instructional design colleagues, is at least you got to have Gagne. So if you haven't applied any structure to your instruction at all, applying Gagne will help. It will keep you from doing, I can't think of a better word now other than dumb stuff. It will keep you from doing dumb stuff like teaching one way and then testing on something differently, or teaching one thing and then testing something else. At least it will keep you from doing that. And you might say, well, nobody would do that. Yeah, they do. I did an evaluation of a course once, and all the students were failing. That was because nothing that they did in the course prepared them for the format of the test. So it was unclear to me how the instructor thought that they were going to pass it. But that just did not occur to that instructor. It didn't mean the instructor was stupid. It just meant that the instructor didn't think about instruction that way. And that's what Gagne will force you to do. It will force you to think through your objectives and how you're going to get your learners to achieve those objectives. It doesn't have to be lockstep, and I talked about that a little bit, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. But for some beginners, it is lockstep, and there's no problem with that. Anyway, I don't want to get into that now because I'll go too long, and I don't want this video to be that long. I do want to show you two articles that I'm going to attach to this video for those of you who are interested. The first one is an article that I found in Nurse Educator. And no, I did not put in nurse for the search term. This is just one of the articles that came up. Using Gagne's 9 events of instruction to enhance student performance and course evaluations in an undergraduate nursing course. Uh, in this particular paper, the authors took a class and they applied Gagne to that class and found improvements in effectiveness, enthusiasm, and final grades. And what I want to say is that doesn't say that Gagne is a wonderful tool. It just says that using Gagne is better than what you were doing before you didn't use Gagne. And in many ways, that's what Gagne can help you improve something that's not working. I think that's a definite cure. I don't think it's the answer for everything, but it can be helpful. And so I just wanted to say that. Anyway, I think you'll be interested in reading this article. It's actually not that long. It's only 3 pages. So I think it'll be an easy and fun read. The next article is even more, well, I shouldn't say it's more interesting. The next article is a Bloom's article. You should have known I would have something on Bloom and something on Gagne. And what the authors do in this paper is they say teaching and assessing basic concepts to advanced application using Bloom's taxonomy to inform graduate course design. Now, it didn't say using it to design a graduate course. It says to inform graduate course design. And I think that that's what Bloom does. It helps us to think about how we're going to design our courses. I know several of you said something that was very interesting to me. You said that I use Bloom, and I'm going to quote him now. I use Blooms to design my courses. And I could not picture that. And I began to think about how I do my course design. And Bloom's does play a role, and I sort of described that to you earlier. But in this paper, I think they spell it out a little more closely. I was surprised when I read this how much it sort of captures how I think about these things. But I'm just going to point out 2 tables in this paper that may cause you to come back and look at it. What they do here is they don't deal with 6 levels of Bloom. In this table, they collapse 2 levels into one. So you end up with a low level, a medium level, and a high level. And they characterize the behaviors at those 2 levels. Then what they do is they say, if these are the activities, well, they're looking at a specific course. These are the activities that are used in that course. And basically they're saying that if your objective is about knowledge and understanding, online quizzes will work very well for this. If your objectives are about synthesis and evaluation, that's not a good choice for online quizzes. If your objectives are about synthesis and evaluation, you may want to look at individual projects, group projects, and portfolios for your activities. And so basically what they do is they look at some class activities and they sort of suggest which levels of Bloom's those activities will help you which see to anyway. I'm not going to say that because I can't phrase the sentence correctly with the prepositions. But anyway, um, if your objectives are in the knowledge understanding domain, quizzes and supplemental lectures seem to have the highest value, followed by those in the medium, and these group projects would just be overkill for this knowledge and understanding. And the knowledge and understanding would be in this class, I wanted you to be able to define instructional design. How did we do that? When you wrote your paper, your first paragraph had to be what? Find 3 definitions of instructional design, present them, and then from those, present your own definition. So I got you from just finding definitions and giving them to me to sort of trying to make some meaning on your own. So I tried to push you up a little bit, but yet we didn't spend a lot of time on that. And the only feedback you got was the feedback that I gave you, or feedback that you got when we talked about this in class. So that's sort of how we're looking at this. So I thought this was very interesting. So this too is a short article. So you may want to look at this. Of course, I'm not going to test you on it or anything like that. I just thought that they were a couple of articles that might be interesting to you. I think that's all I want to say about your previous activity for right now. As we go forward, I'll talk a little bit more about it. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is your assessment strategies that's coming up. Okay, let's look at your assessment strategies activity. This activity builds on the previous activity that you did. You identified your bunk activities in your instructional strategies activity. Last week, this week, you're working on doing your materials. Well, see, I'm 2 weeks after you. Anyway, I hope you know what I'm talking about. The last thing you did was work on your materials for your bunk activities. And I hope you found that you had to maybe be a little clearer about your activities as you begin to add this information. This week, what you're going to do is you're going to say, for this bunk activity, how would I assess it? And so you're going to associate each of your activities with a assessment strategy or some way to assess the activity. So that's what you're going to look at this week. As you have done in the previous weeks, I'm sending you back to the website at the University of Colorado where you're going to look at assessments. There are 14 pages here. They are very short pages. I encourage you to look at them all. I really do. It's only 14 pages. It's quick reading. I suggest that you go through them. Your textbook is a bit disappointing in that it focuses only on traditional testing. And we want to look at more ways of assessing than traditional assessments. And so looking at that University of Colorado website will help you thinking even more about how your objectives and your testing strategies need to be aligned. That will even help you. So I need you to go through those. And then what I've done is I provided 2 other resources for you. One is the Florida Classroom Assessment Techniques website. I'm going to have to update this link because right now it's not working. I don't know why. But the website looks like this. Let's see if we can make this fit. Here we go. Here is the Classroom Assessment Techniques website. And here are a list of classroom assessment techniques. What I've done this week is I've assigned each group 3 classroom assessment techniques. And yours can either be found here or at this particular website. So there are 2 sources. This is really some instructions for how to do online assessment using Blackboard. So it has a lot of instructions in here about how to actually do things in Blackboard. You can ignore all that. What we want to look at are the assessment techniques. If you're going to do them in Blackboard, you would have to know how. But at this point, we're just trying to understand what the assessment techniques are. So the ones that I've assigned to you, you can find them either at this particular resource or at that previous classroom assessment techniques resource that I showed you. You're also welcome to use any other resources, but you can find them in these 2. Let me scroll down. And so I've assigned each group 3. That's it. So what else do you have to do in this particular assignment? the first thing you have to do is to use the book to create a traditional test. And the book presents like seven formats for test items. I want you to create one test item for each one of those formats that's related to your instruction. If you have to push it, push it. But I want one of each type. And you'll be able to see if one is better than the other. But I want one of each type. I'm trying to do a couple of things. I want to make sure that you understand the different types. And I want to have some clue that you can tell which one is working better for your instruction. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is your team has been assigned 3 assessment strategies. I just showed you those. For each strategy, you are to provide a brief overview of the strategy and an example of how that strategy might be used to assess student attainment of one or more of your objectives. So now you're looking at those 3 and you're saying, how might I use that to address one or more of my objectives? So you pick one of the strategies and you find an objective or 2 that they relate to and tell us how you would use this type of assessment, or why you would use it. Okay, you're not committing to using it. We're just trying to give some examples. And once again, you have 3 and then your classmates have 3, so we'll be able to review a lot of them. So you want to describe them such that people who didn't have to focus on that one can understand what it is. Once again, I'm not asking you to write a book. I think a couple of sentences ought to capture it, but I'm not asking you to write a lot. And so, but I want you to be able to learn from each other. So I want you to do that. Then the next thing I want you to do is to go back to those bump strategies. And I want you to take that table that you created in bump, and this is the table. I want you to take that table and I want you to add a column 6. And that column 6 is for an assessment strategy. So for each of your bunk activities, and I can be a little bit flexible with how you present this, but I need the number, I need the name, I need a description of the activity, and your peers need this description of the activity so they can know what it is that you're working with. And in the last week, you gave me columns 4 and 5 where you talked about materials. And this week, I'm asking you to add a column 6. And this is what you're going to submit. You're going to attach to the discussion board. You're going to do number 1, and then you're going to attach this to the discussion board. It's pretty straightforward, I think. Okay. And then you got a couple of questions. What assessment strategies do you regularly use in your practice? Which of the assessment strategies covered in this topic will you add to your toolkit of assessment strategies, and why? And how do you think you can use assessment strategies to address the issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion? So those are just some thought questions. I don't think this is a difficult activity, but then I don't have to do it. But as you see, everybody has 3. Wiley and the Tennessee girls only have 2, and that's because their groups are smaller than everybody else's groups. So I think that's it. I don't have anything else to say about this assignment. Sometime between now and Tuesday, I will do the video on your, what am I talking about? On your final project and the peer review, so that you'll have that. And probably tomorrow or later on tonight, I'll do the video for the next instructional strategies activity. I'll try to do that for you, so we'll have that up. I think that's about it. I'm going to end this right now, and let me know if you have questions. I am and always are, always I am, Dr. Benson, signing out. Talk to you later. Bye.